All right, everyone. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. I'm Menners, of course. I'm joined by Paul Dennett. Now, one of the things you have to do when you go live on Twitter is retweet it from your account. So, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going into Oz Cricket Pod and I'm retweeting the broadcast by A. Menners. And I guess before we get into our little reflections on the game last night, Australia's dire performance, a little bit of housekeeping for those listening on the Cricket Daily feed. But unfortunately, Paul and I have decided to pause Cricket Daily for the foreseeable future. Um, just because we sort of cricket season's coming and we're going to try a few different strategies. One of them, Cricket Unfiltered Live. Paul, I love going live on social media.
I know you do. I think it fulfills a deep need that you have. I like it as well, and it's a great time to do it with the World Cup on and plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I guess the advantage to going. I guess the advantage to going live is you can sort of do it a bit more reactionary and jump on, when something big happens. But thanks to everybody that's listened to Cricket Daily. It's just been, a lot of fun doing it. And we appreciate all the people that have listened every day and sent us messages and are disappointed we're stopping. And please keep listening to Cricket Unfiltered and follow our YouTube page and look out for this live stuff.
Yeah, and we'd like to thank all of the guest hosts that we've had as well. That everyone who came on the show, many of them multiple times, did a wonderful job and did a lot of hard work as well to make the shows possible. So thanks very much. And I'd like to echo what Mena said to those of you who were loyal listeners. Sorry that we're stopping, but hopefully you can follow us along on YouTube and you can enjoy it.
Absolutely.
I agree. We've got a message here that Australia does need to play fearless cricket. First live message. That's very exciting.
Yeah, I wonder who AA is, but they're spot on. That's exactly what I think Australia need to do. They need to just take off the handbrake and just give it everything. So, I mean, what are your impressions of Australia's performance last night? They played India in a warm-up game. India barely got out of first gear. They just walked all over us without putting much effort in. And Australia looked to be trying to play their best game and looked a lap behind.
Yeah, it's hard to be that positive after last night. It did look like a team from another class, just touching Australia up, and you felt like that Rohit Sharma might have been doing a crossword in between balls. He was finding things that easy. But I think you can't, you've got to just say, okay, look, these things can happen. India's the favourite for the tournament. Australia might not even have to play them in the tournament at all. To get touched up by the favourite for the tournament and clearly the best side in the world is no disgrace. And there are a lot of concerns out of last night, but it doesn't matter. You got to just put it to one side. But I agree. It's time for fearless cricket, and I just can't wait for the tournament to begin. I think Australia's going to perform better than a lot of doomsayers think.
Yeah, well, the expectations are so low. I've never seen an Australian team go into a World Cup with such low expectations. Maybe the last T20 World Cup, but even then, I think there was a feeling they would do better then than there is going into the next one. It just seems like there's a general air of doom and gloom, and I think maybe there's a few punters who are glad it's not on free-to-air telly.
I'll tell you the last time we went into a World Cup with such low expectations, 1987. No one gave Australia a chance. They're at their absolute low point at that point, and they went on and won the tournament. Stranger things have happened. I do think it's an interesting talking point around that even the best bowlers in those conditions can go the journey. Maybe, the really exceptional ones that I don't think Australia has in terms of T20 cricket, such as Rashid Khan, like really world-class spinners tend not to get some tap. But I mean, Cummins is as good as we've got. Last night, he just looked like he was there for the taking. And I'm a bit slightly facetious, but Virat Kohli in the warm-up game against England the other night, when he bowled a couple of overs, was against us, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm losing my mind. I've been watching so much late night cricket. Yeah, I mean, he bowled a couple of overs that were eminently acceptable. And it makes me think maybe we should just say, listen, there's no point really in picking players that are not going to contribute with the bat. Let's really extend the batting lineup. say we're going to go hard and fast all the way through. AA has also made the point that Owen Morgan put fearless cricket into England and sort of had that attitude. If you're 5 for 50, back yourself and keep on going. Maybe that's what we need to do as well, and say let's have Stoinis and Inglis and Stark and everyone else in the middle order free to hit. And then if we've got to manufacture a few extra overs out of Maxwell and Stoinis and Mitchell Marsh and even someone like Aaron Finch bowling a couple of overs, maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, I don't think we've got quite the squad for that. I think we would have need to have picked players like Christian and Enriquez if we wanted to go that way.
Yeah.
Now, what about the big talking point from last night? I've sort of woken up to a David Warner storm that, there's a lot of questions, especially on Melbourne radio. Waitley was talking about whether we should back Warner for the World Cup or they have to cut and run now and maybe put someone like Matt Wade to open with Finch and you can bring someone in down the order. What do you think?
I think that Waitley's show is the most entertaining sports show on radio. I really enjoy listening to it. I love when they have Pete Lawler and Robert Craddock on. And today's show was captivating. However, I just think it's a moot point. I think there's no way at all that Australia is not going to go into the opening game with Warner. He was talking about it as though they're at the crossroads and they'll be having these discussions as well. I don't think they will be. I think that Warner is a certainty to start in the first game of the World Cup. And I pick him as well. I wouldn't be averse to throwing Wade up the top and giving him a chance to open, more so because I think he'll do better there relative to him doing down below. Maybe it would help Warner to come in at 5 or 6 and say, you'll have a few opportunities to get some easy singles with the field back and then have a swing. I'm fine with that. But I just think he's such a wonderful player. You've got to pick him in the tournament. And I don't think he's lost all his form. Fair play to you, Menners. I mocked you on our little group text last night with you, me and Jaleesa about the fact that you were saying that, I thought he wasn't out LBW. You're saying, well, you should have just hit the ball. I scrutinized that LBW with the intention of tweeting out a photo showing the ball hitting him outside the line of the off stump. The reason I didn't do that was because the ball actually did just hit him inside the line of off stump. So I think he actually was fairly given out.
Yeah. I guess the counter to backing Warner, and I would back Warner too if I had to. I think it's too late. I think if we drop him now, it just sort of seems like panic. But I guess the problem with sticking with him is these T20 World Cups. If we lose the first couple of games, we're kind of out of it. So if Warner comes out and has a couple more stinkers and we flop, then that's the tournament over. There's no second chances like in a 50 over World Cup where you have enough games to back someone in and then maybe adjust. It's kind of, you've got to make the call now, and it's a big one.
Yeah, but I don't agree that it's too late to drop him. I'm not dropping him not because I think it's too late to drop him. I'm not dropping him because I think he's the best player to pick. If you genuinely think that he is not the right player to pick, but you're going to pick him anyway because you think it's too late, I think that's flawed logic. And that's when you suddenly find yourself after the first 2 games losing and thinking, well, we should have made the choice earlier. I just think that you pick your best 11 and anything around team harmony or too late or whatever else has to go out the window.
Well, by that rationale, I mean Warner's in there because of the squad, but he's certainly way out of form. And Aaron Finch as well. He hasn't looked great.
His dismissal was pretty concerning. It was that kind of old-fashioned dismissal where he just gets hit in front of the stumps, and that was the plumbest LBW of all time. That was a bit of a concern. But again, that's why I'd like to stack the batting and say to Finch, just gut there and really give it a blast. I think that's the way that he should be playing. There were some positives to come out of the night. Steve Smith's innings was superb and confirmed that you've got to pick. Pardon?
Superb.
Yes.
He went along and run a ball for 30 runs. He put all the pressure on Glenn Maxwell. He prevented us from getting a winning score. In fact, I think we should have just kept swinging at that point. There's no point. That's the problem with our T20 campaign. 160 is not going to win you many of these games. India could have, you need to just give it a real crack. And look, I think Steve Smith, I just don't think 57 off 48 deliveries is good enough, to be honest.
Look, I hear what you're saying, but I think that 150 or 160 will be enough to win on many of these games. That's what's been proven in the IPL, that there have been plenty of scores that have only needed to be middling scores. Yes, I think he probably should have accelerated a little bit earlier, but also I think part of it's probably match practice. He wanted to just get some runs in a warm-up game. And I think that our bowling was pretty ordinary. That was the concern, that I expected that we would defend that total a little bit better on another strength. And I think that if it had been a real game, Stark would have bowled more than 2 overs. I thought he looked really good last night, and his figures don't look anything super because he, a couple of nicks through the slips, couple of he had, I think, a shout for a caught behind or an LBW that might have been out, was pretty close. I think that if he bowled a few more overs, then maybe that total would have looked a little bit better.
Yeah, potentially. What do you think about this question from AA? Should Hazelwood play over Pat Cummins? Personally, I would have both in my team. I'd be picking Hazelwood, Cummins, and Stark with one spinner. Like Agar and Zampa, it was just like a gift to the Indian batsmen last night. I think they're trying to play them into the team. But yeah, what do you think about that? Hazelwood over Cummins?
I really like Hazelwood, and again, if Hazelwood went 4 overs, none for 45, it wouldn't surprise me. That's the concern I have with our attack, that they can all go the journey. I sent out my team on Twitter a few minutes ago, and I didn't have Hazelwood in it. But maybe if push comes to shove, I would have him in it. I was concerned by Cummins last night. He was inaccurate. His trajectory looked ordinary, and he just didn't look very good. To be fair, I suppose it is one of his first real hit outs for a while. Look, inevitably they are going to pick probably all 3 of them, and that's fine.
Yeah, Adam Zampa was a little bit concerning last night. I hope he's doing a Shane Warne and holding some tricks up his sleeve for the real thing, because it felt like the Indian batsmen were just picking their balls. Like they would block, hit 4 or 6. It didn't seem to be troubling them much.
True. Although I noticed the first ball that Maxwell bowled, and I think it was Rohit Sharma, just contemptuously swatted him over sort of wideish mid-on for 6. And I think sometimes that is what happens when you play with no pressure. The Indians, no pressure whatsoever, just smash it. When it's the real thing, and we're up against South Africa in the first game, they won't have the freedom to do that, you would think. And so I think the Australian bowlers will look better as a result.
Yeah, I hope so. And just back to the batting, I mean, positive signs from Marcus Stoinis, 41 not out of 25. Yes. Glenn Maxwell, 37 off 28. They both looked good. But as I said, Steve Smith, people have been hammering me on Twitter in the last couple of days since I left him out of my T20 side. But I think really, everyone keeps saying, oh, you need an anchor. I don't think you do. I think Steve Smith gets 10 balls. He can be 10 off 10 or 5 off 10, but that's it. You cannot go through an innings unless it's a raging Bunsen burner like we saw in Bangladesh. If the tracks are okay, you just cannot go through with 30 from 30 and leaving all the work to Maxwell at the other end. I think that's unfair. And actually, as I said, I just think Australia, a bit like what AA said, they just have to take the handbrake off. Smith, if you're going to play, you got to be hitting 130, 140 strike rate.
Yeah, but he was just about on that. And then the last 3 or 4 balls he got marooned. Like he was about to hit that. Plus, don't forget, we're looking at what happened in the context of them, how India destroyed our bowling. That at 3 for 15, Australia would have accepted 150 odd. That was, and Smith hoisted us to that total. At 3 for 15, you're going to lose most games. So I think that Smith actually played a pretty sensible innings and helped us to get to a total that was defendable. Going down your path there and saying, he has to absolutely slog. Now, I'm saying that to a degree, but I'm saying that if we stack the batting lineup, that if he got out straight away, we could have got bowled out for 50. So I think that he took a bit longer to get in than I would have liked, but the circumstances to a degree enabled that. India's innings was made to look better by the fact that they had no pressure on them whatsoever. Smith, towards the back end of his innings, started to play absolutely magnificently. I'm willing to say he was playing himself in a bit of a trial game. And I just think, slide him down the order if we have a great start. But if we have a situation like that at 3 for 15 in a real game, I want Smith coming in. I don't want Wade or someone coming in, or Stoinis.
Yeah, I still think at 3 for 15, we've just got to go. I think the really good T20 size, as I said, you've got to take into account the conditions. And if you're on a tough pitch where 140 might be defendable, that's fine. But I just think at 3 for 15, you still got to be aiming for 170, 180. And
but not
also,
if you're chasing 140. Like if
that's different. Yeah, if you're chasing 140, I wouldn't say aim for 180. But also, the thing is, what if Steve Smith then, you say about getting us up to 150, but what if he gets out on 20 off 20 balls? And then, next player's got to come in and get going. And so we end up with a score of 135. That's my concern.
Yes, but I think that when we were 3 for 15, we're already in a parlous situation, and it's all bad options from that point on. And I'm saying 50% of the time, if we're 3 for 15, we might be chasing only a half decent score. There'll be plenty of opportunities where you'll have someone like Smith coming out, and you'll be happy to have him in the side. And if those opportunities aren't there, then that's when, slide him down the order or tell him to go up there and start hitting from ball one. I think he's going to have a good tournament.
I hope so. People are misconstruing this, that I do not like Smith. He's the first batter I'd pick in our test side, our one-day side. And be honest, and if there were no restrictions, I'd have Smith opening the batting with Wade. I'd have Warner and Finch on the sideline, and Cummins would be skipper. But, we can't do that. So, I'll just stick with what I've said. Any other thoughts from the overnight action at the T20 World Cup?
No, just that there have been times when you can look back at the early performances that teams put in and marvel at how they ended up finishing off. The last T20 World Cup in Australia, Australia played a pretty poor game, their first game against India. Come the final in front of 86,000 at the MCG, they obliterated them. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying, but don't read too much into last night. India looked a million miles better than Australia. They are better than Australia, but on our day, Australia still could cause an upset and beat them. I'm not predicting Australia to win the tournament, but I think that the notion that they've got no chance is a bridge too far. I'm really looking forward to the game against South Africa. I can't wait for it.
Either can I. I guess, how important do you think that game is? Do you think if Australia get off to a bad start, then that's the sort of end of their campaign kind of thing?
I mean, it's hard to determine because it depends how the two teams that come in from the preliminary phase go. But if you just take it as read that those sides won't do all that well, then, and you sort of say it's up to be out of four of Australia, South Africa, England, and the West Indies in order to qualify. Losing one game, you still can make it, but you're at the point where you almost need to win every game. I don't think that's necessarily how it's going to be, though. I think that whichever teams do come through might cause a few upsets themselves on these wickets. So it could be one of these tournaments where we look at it in advance and say, you pretty much need to win every game or only lose one in order to qualify. It may not eventuate that way. Sides might qualify having lost 2 or even 3 games.
Yeah, perhaps. I think the first game is really important for Australia because for me, they just look like a team kind of bereft of confidence. And I think that if they, put in a good performance on the weekend against South Africa, that might give them a bit of a boost and, get that extra bit that we need out of the players if we're going to challenge for the title. I don't think, mathematically it's all over if we lose on Saturday. As you said, it could be a tight group. We saw Namibia with a big win overnight. They might surprise a few people. But I just think confidence-wise, if Australia gets hammered in the first game, it's going to be really hard to bounce back.
Yeah, and I don't think they will get hammered. I think they'll play pretty well. I think that it's still been, how long has it been since we had our best side in a T20 game, in a game that, not in a warm-up game, and really went hell for leather. It's years. It's years since it happened. So I think when all the moving parts come together, I still think we're a formidable side.
Yeah, and I guess Australia traditionally play better in ICC events than South Africa. Not normally T20 ones, but maybe there'll be some historical thing that will play into it? I doubt it, though. South Africa look like a good side. All right. I guess there's one other bit of cricket news I wanted to touch on was that James Pattinson, the former Australian Test fast bowler, has announced his retirement. Quite a shock, really. I think he was expected to play a part in the Ashes, maybe at least be in the squad and potentially play in some of the Test matches. But he's decided that with the bio bubbles and all that entails, he doesn't really want to spend another season just traveling around as a spare bowler. And I guess in years past, when you were that spare bowler, a lot of the time, if you weren't picked, they'd fly you off and play a Shield game and then get someone else to do the 12-man duties. But with COVID, that's not really happening. So it was a bit of a shock. And I think it's a huge loss for Australian cricket, Paul. I think having James Pattinson as your next fast bowler in was a big asset.
Yeah, and especially if he could be injury free. That's the really sad thing about the latter half of his career, that he had so many injuries that he had to battle through, and had surgery and really tried everything. And there's that period where, was it the 2018-19 Shield season, the second half of that season, he was just obliterating sides. And it seemed as though now is his time. He didn't quite capitalize as I thought he might during the Ashes of 2019. And then the fact that we just had so many wonderful fast bowlers, he found it hard to force his way into the side. It's unfortunate. Born in another era, especially in another country, he might have been a type of bowler who'd play 100 Test matches and have a bowling average in the low to mid 20s and have a really, really storied career along the lines of someone like, I don't know, Courtney Walsh or someone. But circumstances conspired against him. So disappointing, but certainly understandable if the injuries are that bad and you just didn't want to come up for the count one more time.
Yeah, I have some great memories of him like steaming in against the Poms in the 2013 Ashes, I think it was, where he was desperate for some revenge after they sledged his brother when he played for England, Darren Pattinson. James Pattinson was wild. Like, he was one of the wildest fast bowlers we've had at that age. He was fired up. He looked like a bit of a psycho, and just a great bowler to watch, and really could make the ball talk. At his best, he had that ability to just shape the ball away at good pace, and that's a pretty hard conversation. Here we go. Here's Jose. They missed to play Patterson. Yeah. I saw this before, actually, Jose, on Twitter about the test last year, the final test that Australia lost where Pattinson didn't play. I do think it would have been a tough call to leave out Stark, Hazelwood, or Cummins from that team at the Gabba. In hindsight, it's obviously easy to make the call because we lost, but I think if you're looking at the way the three fast bowlers did last summer, Hazelwood and Cummins had to play, and then you'd back Stark on the Gabba wicket. But yeah, definitely Pattinson was unfortunate and didn't get a lot of opportunities over the last couple of years. Good for someone like Michael.
Yeah, I agree. In hindsight, that was the wrong decision to play this. So in hindsight, it was the wrong thing to play Stark again in the final test at the Gabba. But at the time, I wasn't calling for him to be dropped, so I can't criticize that they didn't. Yes, it would have been an advantage to play Pattinson. Michael Neser is a fine bowler, and I think that he's someone that we really should be gearing up to have in the 2023 Ashes mix for playing in England. I think that his bowling in English and New Zealand conditions especially, it could be a bit like Terry Alderman. I think it's certainly worthwhile a go in Australia, but I think that it would be a pity for him to be given an opportunity in Australia, not succeed under our conditions, and then bowl himself out of the side and not get on the Ashes trip in 2023.
Yeah, you're right. He's done his duty, a bit like Andy Bickle did in the 2000s, 12-man record amount of games. News coming through that Will Pucovski is going to get a couple of Shield games in before the Ashes. That's good news. Obviously, he's going to miss the game next week at Drummoyne Oval, the first Shield game for New South Wales and Victoria, but expected to play after that. I think that's a good result, but I'd still be treading very carefully with our treatment of Will Pucovski. And I'm not convinced he should be brought in for the Ashes.
I'd definitely bring him in as long as he's healthy. I think that he's a very fine and a huge player for the future.
I also have a sneaky suspicion we'll see Ben Stokes here for the Ashes. Nathan Lyon was quoted today as saying he expects Stokes to play in the Ashes. And that video of him batting and, with mental health issues, it's very hard for the ECB or anyone to do anything but just let Ben, come to his own, find his own path. And if that path is back to the Ashes, which I think it will be, bearing in mind he missed the last one due to the incident in Bristol, I think we're going to see him, and I hope we do, because he would add so much to the series.
I agree, and I think that we saw the tweet of him batting, but he's also sent a tweet out of him bowling as well. And I think that why send those out if there's not something behind them? So I think there's every chance that, yes, he will play some part in the Ashes, and I really hope he does.
Absolutely. All righty, Paul. Well, I guess we'll end our Cricket Unfiltered Live, our first Cricket Unfiltered Live, the new era of live broadcasts. Just stay tuned for one of these when the Aussies get spanked on Saturday night by South Africa. I'm going to come in hot afterwards. It's going to be, midnight Saturday night. It's my son's birthday that day. He's going to have like 20 kids over. So by then I'm going to be strung out anyway. Then the cricket's going to start. We're going to get beaten. So it's going to be ugly. Keep an eye out for that one. Paul,
I've got on Saturday, my wife's Scottish relatives coming over, and they don't hate having a beer. So we're having a barbecue. So who knows what state I'll be in.
Yeah, so look out for that one. AA's just popped a quick question in. Should Khawaja open if Pucovski is not available? I'm saying yes. Give Khawaja this year. Bring him in if Pucovski's not available. I certainly fancy him more than Marcus Harris in this series. All righty, Paul, have a great afternoon. Thanks for everyone that's watched this Cricket Unfiltered Live, and expect us to do this regularly during the Ashes and the World Cup.
Thanks, Jose.